Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 18 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers, and follow us on social media /the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by mybookie.ag for a 50% sign up bonus. And to play the ponies, please visit MyBookie. Use the promo code The Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor the podcast and website, we'd love to help you all. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com to click shop and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber. Get the podcast a little bit early, and if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. All right, my friends, this is a short one for you. We are going to look at what we have, and that is pretty much esports and horse racing. The Florida Derby is coming up today, and I've done some research, hours of research on it, so I figured I might as well at least just share that with you. Now, to warn you, I am not a professional horse handicapper. I don't handicap horse racing often. I do it personally a lot, for the major races, maybe the Breeders' Cup, couple other smaller races sprinkled in, but nothing like, Marco from Wager Talk or some other places. So just fair warning on that. But I tend to do pretty well. I did well at the Belmont last year, as you remember, and did some studying. So I just want to give you one trifecta play. And I will release an article today on our free picks newsletter of a few other plays that I'm going to be making for the Florida Derby. So let's get right into that, shall we? All right. The Florida Derby has about 12 contestants in it. They have one horse that could run it, and that would only happen if a horse gets scratched. That horse is Rogue Element. I'm tossing this horse no matter what, so I'm not that worried about it. I just want to talk about the other 12 horses briefly. I've watched videos on them on their last few races, checked all their buyers' speed figures, looked at the distances that they have won, looked at some of their breeding, and obviously looked a little bit at their trainers and jockeys. One very interesting thing that happened before the race is that Javier Castellano has come down with the coronavirus. So he was asymptomatic, and he was tested during his physical this week, I believe, on Wednesday. He was supposed to ride a Todd Pletcher horse named Candy Tycoon. I actually liked Candy Tycoon for a potential second, and I still might. But this is some interesting news here. I, as of yet, do not know the jockey that will be replacing Candy Tycoon.
The ceiling is the roof.
So hopefully, Javier Castellano gets better and remains asymptomatic throughout this whole period. And let's hope also that nothing else goes on. This Florida Derby has been under a lot of scrutiny for doing this. As you know, other parks and tracks are staying open. So Santa Anita's open. Golden Gate was open yesterday. As a matter of fact, we had a handicapper release some plays on theoddsbreakers.com yesterday on the Golden Gate fields. Maddie did that. Good job to Maddie. I guess he had a good day yesterday. Let's hope that they made the right decision and everybody remains healthy. Let's get into this race and some of the key things about the Derby here. Some good things to know about the Florida Derby. It's got a $750,000 purse and 180 Kentucky Derby qualifying points. Now, obviously, these horses are going to run again before the Derby since it's been postponed to September. I believe it's going to be September 5th. It's going to be interesting to watch the Derby and college football, if that obviously doesn't change. Maybe have some parlays going or something crazy. But the Florida Derby, back to the Florida Derby, total of 24 Florida Derby winners went on to win the Kentucky Derby. So it's looked at one of the most important prep races. Last year, as you know, Maximum Security crossed the finish line at the Kentucky Derby, but was disqualified. It would have been 25 if that crazy situation with the infraction didn't happen last year. So that was interesting. Todd Pletcher has won a whopping 5 editions of the Florida Derby, including 4 of the last 6. He has 2 horses in here, Candy Tycoon and Governor Morris. Is this a year to fade Todd Pletcher? Is this a year to get back on Todd Pletcher? That's interesting. Audible has won the 2018 race at odds of 1.6 to 1, being the only favorite to win in the last 10 years. The only favorite, literally. So there's a favorite that we like a lot in this race, but that concerns that play. No horse has won the Florida Derby by a larger margin than Empire Maker in 2003. He won by 9 3/4 lengths. So that's the largest margin. The Florida Derby has a big impact in the Triple Crown races. 24 Derbies, as we said, 19 Preakness Stakes winners and 16 Belmont Stakes winners. Jockey John Velasquez has won 5 of these races. It's a record. And 3 of the last 4, he's going to be riding Governor Morris this year. Let's get into some of these horses then. I'm going to start with the favorite, since the favorite's only won once in the last 10 years, and that is Tiz the Law. And Tiz the Law looks so good that he is about even money. Okay? So not a ton of value there to bet him to win, place, or show. But his last buyer speed was 100. He pulled ahead of the second favorite, Ete Indienne. And he did clearly beat Ete Indienne. And then Ete Indienne ran one race since then. I'll get into him in a minute. But Tiz the Law is a Barclay horse trained by Tag Barclay. And his sire was Constitution, which was a Tappet descendant. And Tappet, as you know, was a great horse that won the Belmont a few years back. This horse has already won about $500,000 this year. So this horse, it's taken, out of the 4 times it has raced, it's taking a first, a third on a sloppy track, and then a first at the Holy Bull. So that's why this horse is so favored. And to be honest with you, I watched the videos. This horse does really look the part. The second favorite is Ete Indienne, and he looks really good. He's got a buyer speed of 97 and 95 his last 2. It was 86 before that, so you see some improvement here. Now, Ete Indienne raced after the Holy Bull. He lost to Tiz the Law. He raced Candy Tycoon, and as seen on TV, 2 other horses running in this, and Ete Indienne beat them pretty clearly. But Ete Indienne had a great trip on this race. There was nobody around this horse. The other horses were kind of battling for position behind him. So Candy Tycoon is a horse that was actually kind of coming up and had to run from 6th place and barely made 2nd at the finish. So that was interesting. Ete Indian, I do not like him at first. I like him at possibly second. So going back to Tis the Law, of course, I like him in some of my exotic wagers as a first, second, and third. We'll be using this horse most. But Ete Indian, the second favorite, I only like him for second or third. The horse that I do like for my other first place is the number 9 horse, Independence Hall. Okay. Also a Tappet descendant. This horse did run a buyer once of 101 4/9. And that was when he won away a while back, and that was back in November 3rd at Nashua. So he did have a slower race since then. Only had 82 buyer at Aqueduct. And then at Tampa Bay, this horse took second to Solvante, okay, and had a 92 buyer. So at least he had a 92 buyer there. But I did watch that race. Independence Hall apparently lost his tongue tie right before the race and then threw his right shoe right after the start and still did pretty well. Now, if that's true, then I'll be right to be on this horse. This horse is a stalker, and on a little bit longer of a track, I think this horse has a great shot to come from behind and win this race, and this is why he is my other favorite in this race. I'm going to go back to the number 1 horse as seen on TV. I have the number 1 horse. I would use it as a number 3 in my exotics. This horse has made about 148,000. It took third in the Fountain of Youth. So it did really well in the juvenile sprint back in November 9th. It took second in the Mucho Macho Man, but all these races were pretty short races, 1 mile or less. When he went to a mile and 16th, he took third behind Ete Indian and Candy Tycoon. I think he's got ability. I don't like his inside draw. So he might try to take the pace. And if he's going to run some suicide fractions, then he's going to fade. Okay, especially towards the end of this race. So I will only use as seen on TV as a third. Chivalry is a toss, the number 2 horse for me. This horse does have a lot of experience, and it's all at Gulfstream Park. Well, for the most part, all of them are really at Gulfstream Park. But this horse is at 30-1. It hasn't taken a first place since back on January 4th on a 6 furlong race, less than a mile. So, I'm not super confident with this horse either. This horse has never rode over 7 furlongs. It's never rode a mile. Okay. And its highest buyer ever was 4 races back at 88. His last buyer was a 76. We're tossing this one. Number 3, Disc Jockey is very interesting to me. Okay. Doesn't have necessarily the best breeding. Sire was Bodie Meister. And before that, Empire Maker. But what I do like is his post position at 3. It's a good position. And I think that it could set up well for him if he can stay in it. I think this horse could actually even pull up to second. What I like about him is a long time ago, back in September, he had a first place win where he broke his maiden. And that's what that means, actually. And the buyer speed was only a 33. It was, a long time ago. And then he took a is on another first place. And this was in January 11th. And he had an 85 buyer. And then his buyer improved to 89 against Scarto in the American Fabius race. So that was on February 17th. I watched that race. And this horse was closing on American Fabio, but it just wasn't quite long enough. And Disc Jockey has definitely a shot to improve. But what I really like is that and the 20-1. So that 20-1 makes me want to put him at least in at second for this for an exotic wager. Okay, so he's one of my horses that runs second. Number 4 horse is Soros. Soros has only run 1 mile races, only 3 of them. Not a lot of experience. His highest buyer is only a 78. 2 73s and a 78. Soros didn't even hit the board in his last race. So this is a toss horse for me. Soros is at 30-1, but I think this distance is too far for Soros. His breeding isn't there either. Governor Morris is very interesting to me, the number 5 horse, and this is a Pletcher horse. Okay. Javier Velasquez is going to be riding this horse, the one with all the wins, Pletcher. A lot of people are on that because of this. This horse is only 8-1, and it'll probably be only 5 or 6-1 by the time the start. This is one of the horses I probably want to stay away from, in my opinion. I do like the fact that his buyer. I'm sorry. Let me restate that. Stay away for first place. I don't think this horse has it when it for first. I think when he went up in distance in a mile and 16th, he took a second, and actually Castellano was his jockey at the time. But he did take first in his last race on February 14th with an 87 buyer. So lots of people will be on this horse. And I'm just wondering if this horse can actually beat the top competition here. He's expected to move forward, but he just doesn't quite have the buyer that I'm looking for, just being at 87. I like this horse to hit the board maybe at 3. I struggled to put it at 2, but you obviously can't have too many plays. The next horse we're going to get into is Ajaweed, and this horse here is at 20-1. Whenever it stepped up in distance, it could never close the deal. It did well when it ran a mile and an eighth, I suppose. It took second under Shotsky at the Remsen, but at his last race at a mile and 16th, he took second to Sol Vante at the Sam F. Davis race, which was at Tampa Bay. This horse has never ran at Gulfstream Park. Okay, its highest buyer was 85, and it went down to 74. I have to toss this horse. It has winnings of 139,000. I don't recognize the sire, and Claren McLaughlin is the trainer. So let's move on to the next horse, and we already covered Tiz the Law. So the number 8 horse is My First Grammy at 50-1. This horse has been raced only 3 times before. All 1 mile races, all at Gulfstream. So My First Grammy did take a second his last race. He took a third his middle race. Didn't hit the board his first race. This horse, his best buyer is at 75. It at least improved from 55 to 69 to 75, but 75 is still quite low. This horse hasn't stepped up in length yet. I think it's going to be very tough for this horse to hit the board at a mile and an eighth. This horse I'm going to have to toss. No major breeding on this horse either. Well, Kirtland's a pretty decent one. The next is Independence Hall at number 9, and I already discussed this one. I will be using him first, second, and third. As I said before, this horse is the only one with a buyer, a little bit ahead of Tiz the Law. He went down to 82, then back up to 92. And he had that, bad race, obviously, where he threw a shoe. The next horse is the interesting one to me, and that is Candy Tycoon at number 10. Okay. And I decided to use him as a second for the Pletcher horse. He's the other Pletcher horse, even though I don't know the jockey here. I watched his trip when he lost to Ete Indian and came up to second. This horse had a terrible trip this race, was stuck behind a group of people. But this race was a mile and 1/16. If this race, being that it's a mile and an eighth, I loved how he finished. He's a closer. And I think that he's going to have an opportunity here coming from the mid to snag a second. Very potential. So, I don't know who's jockeying him, but I'm sure being that it's a Todd Pletcher horse, it's going to be somebody very good. I like Candy Tycoon. I think I like Candy Tycoon. His buyer would have been better than 84 had he not been so stuck and lost that race to Ete Indian. So we're going to use Candy Tycoon for sure in my exotics. Sassy but Smart is the next horse here, 50-1. This horse is his buyer went from 52 to 55 to 76 to 81. Small increments, but in already races 4 times. Not loving it. He didn't even hit the board in his last race at the Palm Beach. And that was all at Gulfstream Park here. So I honestly think the field is too good for this horse. That's why this horse is 50-1. Great price, though. I'm not going to talk anybody off this. If I was going to take any of the long shots, it'd probably be this one, just because of the improvement. Kendall is his trainer. The sire is Overdriven. And yeah, it just seems to me that the competition is a little bit too good. Now, the post position at number 11 is not that good. I think the speed of the pace is going to get to this horse, and he could be very boom or bust. And when I say boom, I'm thinking just kind of 4th, 5th, 6th type thing. I don't think this horse has it to come in close, and that's because the other 4 races he's raced, he's only taken 1 first place, and that was only at a mile, and that buyer speed on February 13th was at 76. The last horse is Ete Indian, and I discussed him a little bit. Love how his buyers on his last 5 races went 62 back in September, 65 in October, 86 in December, 95 when he lost to Tis the Law, which was a very good buyer, and 97 when he won the Fountain of Youth. So this horse is for sure a second play for me. The problem is this is going to be your second favorite horse, probably going to go off at 3-1. It's 4-1 right now, opening. People will be on this horse. I don't like the post position here. I do like the experience at Gulfstream Park. I like the fact that he's ran a mile in the 16th 3 different times. So, this horse is, definitely has some experience here, but I think he's kind of peaked. I just feel like this horse is going to be played in my exactas at second and the trifecta at third. So I'm going to give you one trifecta box play that with keys that I'm going to play. I'm keying in the 9 horse as hopefully the hitter, and that's coming off at 92 Independence Hall with Tis the Law, which is unfortunately the even money horse. Have to play him at first. And obviously we're going to play them first, second, or third. My second line in this box is going to be the 3 horse, which is Disc Jockey, the 7 horse, which is, of course, Tis the Law, the 9 horse, which is Independence Hall, the 10 horse, which is Candy Tycoon, cross my fingers with him, and the 12 horse, Ete Indian. And the last leg of the trifecta box here will be the 1 horse as seen on TV, the 3 horse Disc Jockey, the 5 horse Gouverneur Morris, I suppose you pronounce it, and the 7 horse Tis the Law, the 9 horse Independence Hall, the 10 horse Candy Tycoon, and the 12 horse Ete Indienne. This box will cost $40 on a $1 trifecta. You can obviously play it 50 cents if you want, which would only be $20. So that's what I have for you today. Be looking for my plays on this race, for my exactas and anything else on the Free Picks newsletter. Have a fantastic Saturday watching these races, and go get some.